When I started making graphical user interfaces, it was back in the dark days of Swing, and I had to do everything manually. I had to program all the UI elements. But because that's sort of how I cut my teeth on UIs, that's still the way I prefer to make them. If I'm using JavaFX, for example, I usually default to just programming the UI construction. But a lot of my students seem to really prefer the graphical scene builder, maybe because they've never seen one before. So with the caveat that one should never use a wizard to generate any code you couldn't write by hand, I would like to do a little demo here of using SceneBuilder to build a simple JavaFX application. And truth be told, the first time I used SceneBuilder was this morning. And I had some fun with it, and I thought, hey, why not screencast the whole process? So we're going to create a new project. And I'm going to choose JavaFX here, and this is all okay. And I'm going to call this online word count. The idea is that we're going to give this application a URL. It's going to go to that URL, fetch the content, and tell you how many words are there. All right. So now, because I chose the JavaFX template, I see something different than if I just make a vanilla Java project. So in the source folder, I can see there's 3 things in a sample package. So there's this guy called controller. Very simple. Main is a very conventional main for a JavaFX application. It's just going to load up the UI that's specified in this file and then kick it off, basically. And sample.fxml is the actual view. Now, that's not very interesting here. It's just a bunch of XML. But if you click on this SceneBuilder tab at the bottom, we get a way we can drag and drop components here, which again, a lot of my students tend to enjoy tinkering with, but because I haven't really scaffolded that in the past, sometimes that didn't lead to very good results. So let's try to build something together here real quick. But first, we need to do a little bit of cleanup. Sample is a terrible name for a package. It violates Java naming conventions. So I'm going to start by renaming that. So I'll say let's say refactor, rename, and we'll call this edu.bsu.cs222, and I'm going to call this online word count. Refactor. Notice it actually kind of panics here. We'll just close that. All right, but now we've got a good package specified there, and in fact, it had previously had a main configuration I could have run, and now this X tells me that's broken because main is now in a different package. So I'll just right-click here. I'll say run, and what we get is, once it compiles, we get just kind of this empty box, and the box happens to be 300 by 275. Okay, so let's see, I'll go ahead and maximize that. All right, so let's go ahead and try to build something really simple out of this. The default layout here is grid pane. So if I start dropping in elements like buttons and checkboxes and stuff, it's going to default to being in a grid, but grid is usually not what I want. What I want here is, in my opinion, for building simple, quick and dirty UIs, the best way is with HBoxes and VBoxes. So an HBox is a container where you have a bunch of things in a row horizontally. A VBox is where you have a bunch of things in a column vertically. So the first thing I'm going to do is wrap this grid pane in a VBox. And then I'm actually going to delete the grid pane because I don't want it at all. Oh, I guess I can't press delete, so I'll have to say delete this way. Okay, so there's my top level VBox. Let's go ahead and drop in a label. Let me just adjust the screen here a bit. There's a label. I can drop it in here. I can drop it in here. I prefer to drop it there, so I just dragged and dropped that there. Here's a label, and let's give ourselves a little bit more room here to see the properties. In the text here, we'll say online word counter. Okay, good. And just as a proof of concept, we could go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Yeah, now it says online word counter. Fantastic. Underneath that, let's put a label and a text box next to each other, where the label says URL and the text box is where we put in the URL. So to handle that, I'm going to drop in an HBox. Under containers here. HBox. Plop that in inside the VBox. I'm just going to drop it there. It becomes the next thing, next child in the sequence. So there's an HBox, and in that HBox, I'm going to put another label. Under controls, label in the HBox, and let's see, a text, not a text area, that's a big box. Text field is just a single line. So I'm going to put that in the HBox like that. Okay, so let's go to this label and give it a good meaningful name like URL, be where we put the URL, and that'll be the text box where we put in the URL. So again, in the interest of just rapid prototyping, let's see what that looks like. Neat. So here I can put in, whatever you want to put there. Whoops, I was supposed to say Google, but I fell off by a key. Good enough. Of course, nothing does anything, right? This is just standard text box stuff. So, if we look at that, we might already want to say, well, it's kind of ugly. They're all just kind of crunched up in the upper left corner. So let me show you a really quick and easy way to adjust that alignment. So the VBox itself can handle the alignment of its children if I just change the alignment here. So I'm going to set that to center. And let's do the same thing inside the HBox. Set it to center its children. And now, if we run this, just looks a little nicer. Again, it's still quick and dirty, right? But it's good enough. See, something else you might say is, well, look, this label and this text field are right up next to each other. There's no padding between them. Well, we can fix that too if we want to. We can, let's see, let's set that in the HBox again and set a padding between its children. Or I think it's called spacing. Probably under layout here. Oh, I missed it on the first pass. There it is, spacing. There. Now my preview here looks a little bit goofy. And honestly, I'm not sure how to expand that, but if I run it here, there. Now there's a little 6-pixel space there. It looks nice. All right. And let's put in a button that when we press that button, it's going to go to that URL and read the content and count the words. So let's find a button that's going to be up here in Controls. Here's a button, and we're going to put that into the VBox. If you'd rather put it down here, you can, but then you got to deal with this sensitivity of regions. I find this to be pretty clear. There's my button, and let's have this button say, let's get counting. Nice. Okay, so what I'd like to do is when we press that button, take a specific behavior. Now, if we were just kind of programming this by hand, we would probably set an action listener or something like that, or on-click listener. Using SceneBuilder, there's a nice trick here where I select the button. I can go to this code pane. And from the code pane, I can give method names that are invoked when the action is enacted. So when I click that button, we're going to call a method called count words. That'll work. Oops. Get that selection again. Show that that's stuck. Yep. So there's a method called count words. Now, where does that method live, right? Whose method is that? Well, this is where the concept of a model view controller architecture comes up. So this file that I'm in, the sample.fxml, is my view. It controls what everything looks like. And not the behavior, though. The behavior is going to be in a class called the controller. So that's how you separate a view from the controller. The view is basically just layout, and the controller is the view's behavior. And then the model, the third part of that, is your programmatic model. So in our case, that would be things like counting words. Okay, so here's the controller. But let's take another look at the sample.fxml. Remember that SceneBuilder is actually just a convenience tool for what is actually an XML file. Right? The XML file is sort of the real representation. So let's look at this again a little bit. We've got this alignment equal center, right? We set that through that properties tab. Over here we can see that there's a controller specified, right? So there's no magic here. This VBox is saying my controller is called this name, right? Which is going to be that file. Now down here, IntelliJ is nice enough to give us a little hint that this method doesn't exist. Right? We're saying on action call count words, but what does that mean? Well, you know my favorite keyboard shortcut in IntelliJ. Let's try Alt-Enter. And it says we want to make that a method. Yes, please do. Voila, here we are. Over in controller, that method is now automatically stubbed out for me. So if I want to just do a very, very simple proof of concept, I can say that, and let's run this again. Now we've got a button. I can click on it, and you see it says foo down here. Nice. All right, so all those pieces now fit together, right? So main is really just a bootstrapping, right? It's really just doing some very simple stuff to kick off the application. The view is all in sample.fxml, and the behavior is in the controller. Now with those pieces in place, I'm feeling like I should commit this to version control. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say VCS enable version control integration. For some of you who are currently taking my class, this may be your first time seeing me do this, so I'm just going to talk through this a little bit. I'm going to turn on version control here. I'm going to use git and say OK. And what that does here, you can see down here, it makes an empty repository in the project folder. Also, it enables this version control button, or it will as soon as I click outside. There it is. So now I can use this version control tab, and I can see all these files are part of the project, but they're not in version control yet. I'm just going to go ahead and add them all. I'll right click here and say add to VCS. Everything's in version control. And I'm going to go ahead and try to commit those to my repository. So I'll call this the initial commit of a project that shows a non-functional UI for counting words at a URL. That's kind of long, but you know what? It's too long. Initial commit is what this is. This is a project. Shows a let's say that counts words at a URL. There. In case we need to go back and see where we were, that's good. I'll put in my name here. That's my natural name, followed by my email address. Good. And I'll say commit. Now what may happen is we see a couple of warnings, right? Because this code analysis button is checked, it's going to check all my files for compiler warnings. Let's review those because we generally don't want to commit things with warnings. Now these warnings are actually part of the XML processing. So this children tag, right? I'm just interpreting what it says here. Default property tag could be removed. So the children tag is the default. It's what child would be activated if you didn't put any name there. And I don't think there's a way to just disable that inspection for here. So in order to make the warnings go away, we can actually just kill that and that and that and save. And then, yeah, no more warnings, right? Otherwise, we'd see yellow bars over there. Okay, so we'll go back over here. We'll say commit again. This is going to be the commit button, commit changes. And let's see, will control space remember who I am? Yes, good. Everything else it remembers, I'll say commit. Good. Now that gives me a stake in the ground in case I need to go back because I broke something, which will probably happen. All right. So what should we do next? Let's actually do something when we click that button. How about if we go to that URL and grab the text and just like spit it out or something, so we don't actually have a word counter plugged in yet, but that's good for incremental development. And really I'm not dealing with unit tests, for example, because right now I'm just working in the view. I'm just working on pushing on things. I could make a separate model level module for doing the network access, but for the sakes of this tutorial, I don't think that's worth it. So let's go back to then count words and make this do something better. Now, count words is going to have to go and get the text out of that text field, right? This text field here. So that's really easy to do in JavaFX. We can set up here on properties. Oh, I thought there was one up here also for ID, but I guess it's just down here in code. We'll give this an ID, and we'll call this the URL field. Now, once we have that ID set, we can reference this in code, and I think the easiest way to do it is like this. So from right inside the controller, we can make a field, and we'll tag it with fxml. Oh, maybe we should do this. Let's do this through code generation again. Back over here, I wonder if we can do it. Let's see, where's that text field? Here it is. If I use Alt-Enter here, yeah, look at that. It'll just do the work for us, which is nice, right? We don't have to spend time writing. So let's press Enter, and we get that field. Now, there's an annotation here which is useful, fxml, and this lets the compiler, lets the system know that these things are meant to be tied back to the fxml document. And I think it's like the override annotation, where it's technically not necessary, but when you have it in there, it can protect you from making some mistakes down the road. particularly regression defects, right? If something used to work and then you change something and it breaks. So in any case, here we are with URL field. I wonder if I can make that private. Let's try it. I would like it to be private, so we'll see what happens. Now, when somebody presses that button, let's do something really simple first. Let's just echo that text, URL field dot get text. Just echo that to system that out, just proof of concept. So let's run that. Here it is. I'll say foobar. Let's get counting. There it is. Cool. So the pieces are all in place. Notice there's a compiler warning here. Let's see what it says. Oh, action event is never used. And in fact, I don't think I am going to use it. I can't think of any reason I need to use it except that it needs to be there because we're tying this together using fxml. So that's kind of a funny case. I'm going to suppress that warning. Oh, can't I do that? Here we are. Suppress for method. Unused declaration. Cool. So I guess I could add a comment here explaining why I'm suppressing that, but I think it's kind of obvious that that parameter just has to be there in order to tie all the pieces together. So, and your mileage may vary on that one. All right, so with that compiler warning addressed, let's actually make this do something interesting. So let's make a URL out of it. This is going to be URL field dot get text. Make a URL out of it. All right, so there's a chance here. By the way, I'm just using Alt-Enter, and then Enter to import java.net.url. This is going to give an error because the URL constructor will throw a malformed URL exception if that text is not a valid URL. And for like a real project to really dress this up, I should be handling that. But for the sake of this video, to keep it from getting too long, I'm just going to throw a fit if the wrong thing comes in. So I'm going to wrap this whole thing in a try catch and say, well, if we get malformed URL exception, then I'm going to simply cascade it and say throw new runtime exception and wrap it with a runtime exception. So this will just make the whole thing bomb out and crash, which is really inelegant. But again, for the sake of the video, it's a simple way out. Okay, so this will get me the URL. What I need to do then is go out to the network and grab whatever content is at that URL. And so I have another video, I'll provide a link, that talks about using Executor Service to do this. I don't want to belabor the point here, but I am going to use an Executor Service. The short version of the story is, if I just right here, if I went out to that URL and started reading from it, I would lock up my event thread and my UI would get unresponsive. So the best thing to do is use an executor. I'm going to make one up here, a private final executor, or executor, I guess, depending on where you're from. Alt-Enter, import class, yes. And there's a really handy utility method called executors, and I'm going to use a single thread executor. Very simple. So what will I do with it? I will say, have it execute a new runnable. I'm going to use an anonymous inner class here. If you've never heard of that before, you want to look it up. I'm saying it's an anonymous inner class. Go to the Java tutorials over at oracle.com, and you can read about essential Java structures. Whoops. Okay, we're going to make a new runnable. Again, I'll use the old Alt-Enter trick to implement methods. All right, so all of that plumbing was just so that I could write this run method, which would actually execute on a separate thread rather than the UI thread. So what will we do here? We will, let's use a buffered reader. That's one of my favorites. Buffered reader, and we're going to wrap an input stream reader around url.open connection, open stream. There it is. Okay, I got to do a couple imports, so I'm just using Alt-Enter again to do that for me. And here, this also is a case where something could go horribly wrong, like the network being down or the server going crazy. And I should handle that for like real software, but to keep the video from getting over long, I'm just going to do the same technique again, where I just bomb out. Okay. Incidentally, this structure here that I'm using, you might look at that and say, oh, wait a minute, isn't that a clean code violation? What's going on here? It's actually an instance of what's called the decorator design pattern. If you're a current 222 students, we'll be talking about design patterns later on, but no reason you couldn't look this up now if you wanted to. In my opinion, this is the archetypal example of decorator design pattern. This is the best place to see it. So, okay. The point is, we get a reader out of this, and the reader allows us to read one line at a time off of this network stream. So I can do something like while reader.readLine. Let's see, we gotta have a string to put that in. So like this. Let's see. That's a little janky, but it'll work. So we're going to keep reading lines until there's nothing there. The way that buffered reader works is if we say read line and it returns null, that means the stream is empty. We'll just echo it out. Again, just for the sake of seeing if these pieces work or not. So let's see. Let me just go to I don't know. Let's go to Global Game Jam is coming up. Let's go to their website. Here's the application. globalgamejam.org. Neat. So what we see here is it's just spitting out everything that it reads off that network connection. So it's really just all kinds of HTML. But I'm going to, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring my browser over here. And let's do something fun like get the text of Beowulf. No, I want plain text. Plain text. What I want is the what's the project called? It's called Project Gutenberg. I want Project Gutenberg. Beowulf. Here we are. Because from here, I can get the plain text. Add a URL. That's going to have a little bit of a header there, but yeah, so we can take that, we can paste that into our application and see what happens. Oop, I've got two running now. So, it's slow, nothing's happening just yet. Is it broken? Oh, you know what, I'm looking at the old one. Got to close that tab. Here's the original one. This is getting sloppy. Let's close that. Run it again. And so permission stuff. Here we are. There's actual Beowulf. So we just took what might be the oldest thing written in the English language and read it off the internet and printed it to the console inside of an IDE. That's kind of cool. All right, so those are kind of all the pieces that we need to actually make this work. If we wanted to solve the real problem, we would need a word counter, which if you're currently taking CS222, that's what we're working on in class, so we could plug that in here. The other thing we'd probably want is a place to show the result. So we'd probably do something like we did here, where we take an HBox and we put it inside the VBox, and in there we'll stick a label that says result and a text field that says, well, that will be the result. In fact, it'll be non-editable because we'll just fill it in with data. And of course, we can always go into HBox here and make that look pretty by doing that. So I'll leave the rest kind of as an exercise for you. I can put this code up on GitHub somewhere in case you want to grab it. But that should do it. Again, to make it work, right, there's one piece of it will be adding in the word counter, but another piece would be doing something more intelligent around those exceptional cases, right? So what if my URL is malformed? What if the network goes down? Or what if there's actually nothing at that URL? Something else to consider is that when I press the button, maybe we want to actually disable that button, right? So we can't click it twice in a row. For long things like Beowulf, that might be a good idea. How would we do that? Well, the approach would be very much like we did with URL field. We'll make an FX ID for it, and we can bring it in as an FXML element here, and then we can tell it to and be enabled or disabled depending on what we want it to do. So I hope that was helpful. We'll be using this code a little bit in class, so I'll see you there. I actually finished recording, and then I remembered, oh no, I didn't actually commit to my repository. So I started another recording. I'll splice these two together, right? Because we made some important changes here, and we don't want to forget to commit those to the repository. These are the two files that changed. Commit. All right, so what did we do? We made this so that it outputs the text at the URL to the console. There we go. Control space, get my name, commit. Uh-oh, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, was review for warnings. So let's see. One of them, we could replace with a lambda. Again, back in the dark ages when I started doing Java, there was no such thing, but these days we might as well do it. There, now it's a lambda instead. And a default property tag could be removed. Again, this was generated by SceneBuilder. Same warning as before. We'll clean that up. And if we try committing again, it will again run the code analysis. I don't know why it doesn't remember the author name. Commit. Voila, we're all set. Thanks for watching.